If you'd ever told me I'd see a millionaire break down in tears right in his own front yard, hugging his son like he was about to lose him forever, I'd have laughed in your face. But that's exactly what I witnessed that sweltering July afternoon. You ever notice how some houses look friendly from the outside, but if you could peel back the walls, you'd find more heartbreak than happiness? Yeah, that's the kind of place we're talking about. And it all started with a boy who looked like he'd just had the world snatched out of his hands. Suitcases gripped so tight his knuckles turned ghost white, dusty tears tracking down his face, and the voice of a woman slicing through the quiet like a hot knife. Out. Now, you know what I mean? It was the kind of moment you never forget. Ethan, that little guy, he was maybe 8 or 9, standing on the porch of what was supposed to be his home, hoping for one kind word, just one sign that he was welcome, that someone would reach for him. But all he got was a cold, twisted sneer and a finger pointed down the dirt road. Go back to your grandmother. This isn't your home anymore. What she didn't know, what none of us could have guessed, was how deep those words would cut, not just for Ethan, but for everyone tangled up in that story. Now, before you think this is some soap opera, let me back up a sec. Ethan hadn't always felt like an outsider here. After his mom passed, he'd been living with his grandma on the other side of the valley, the kind of place where life was slower and people knew your name. His father, Marcus, the millionaire in the title, though money never made him less human, used to visit, bringing toys, stories, and those rare, genuine smiles that light up a kid's world. Sometimes, Ethan would make the long walk just to surprise his dad. Every other time, Marcus would sweep him up, call him his boy, and the world felt right for a moment. But this time, well, the universe must have taken a wrong turn. Marcus had been away on business for weeks, leaving his house, and, as it turned out, his son's happiness, in the hands of a woman who wore a smile only when it suited her. Soon as his car disappeared down the lane, she turned ice cold. Ethan, lonely and missing his dad, finally packed a bag and made that walk again, thinking maybe, just maybe, he could wait for his father's arms at the door. Instead, he was greeted like a stray, blocked, belittled, told in no uncertain terms he didn't belong. I mean, the kid didn't even get inside before the verbal fireworks started. Your father left me in charge, she barked, and you're not welcome here. You ever want to scream at a grown-up for being so heartless? Yeah, that happened. She didn't stop at words. When Ethan pleaded, said he'd just wait quietly in his father's room, the woman shoved him back so hard he scraped his hand on the porch. You're no better than the servants here, she spat. Take your things and leave before he comes back. And right then, as Ethan stumbled onto the grass, struggling with bags bigger than his hope, something changed in the air. He asked her, almost in a whisper, "Where will I go?" She didn't flinch. Back to your grandmother. She's the only one who wants you. The cruelty in that moment, the way his small frame shrank under the weight of shame, well, it hung over that yard like a storm cloud. But the universe, for once, was listening. What the woman never saw coming was that Marcus had changed his plans. Instead of being gone another week, he'd wrapped up business and was barreling down that old country road, eager to see his son's face. Gifts and hugs ready for a happy reunion. But happiness had packed up and left before he arrived. As he turned onto the drive, he saw his boy in the middle of the yard, dragging suitcases, crying, alone. Marcus slammed the brakes so hard the gravel skidded. "Ethan!" he shouted, and everything, every single bit of control that woman thought she had, shattered. Ethan, mid-tear, turned to see his father. All he could manage was, "Daddy," and the rest just spilled out in sobs. The woman, still frozen on the porch, went pale as Marcus stormed over, eyes burning holes through her excuses. When Ethan pointed, trembling, and said, "She said I don't belong. She said you didn't want me." It was like the world stopped spinning for Marcus. The man's whole life shrank to that moment. His son hurt, betrayed, almost lost. "You'd better have a damn good explanation," he said, voice low as thunder. The woman tried her best, said she was keeping order, said the boy brought in dirt, said she was just following rules. But Marcus wasn't buying it. Order? You think throwing out my son is order? This is his home. Not yours, not mine. His. She stammered, tried to backpedal, but Marcus had made up his mind. You've shown me exactly who you are. I have no place in my life for people who treat my child like trash. Here's the twist. All this time, the house staff had been watching, caught between their jobs and their sense of right and wrong. James, the old chauffeur, finally stepped forward, voice quiet but steady. Sir, I wanted to help, but she threatened to fire me if I said a word. Marcus looked him in the eye, nodded. You've always done right by us, James. This isn't on you. Sometimes the quietest bystanders have the loudest hearts, you know. Without another word, Marcus knelt down, hugged Ethan so tight the boy almost disappeared in his arms. I'm so sorry, he whispered. You'll never be treated that way again. You're my son, and you'll always belong with me. Then he stood, holding Ethan, turned to the woman and said cold as winter, pack your things. You're leaving this house today. She tried to protest, but the verdict was final. And just like that, the power shifted. The villain sent packing, the staff breathing easier, the boy reclaimed. That night, the house glowed with something it hadn't seen in years, warmth. Marcus and Ethan curled up by the fire, a soft blanket around the boy, hot cocoa warming his hands, his father quietly brushing away the last traces of dirt and fear. Will you send me back to Grandma's? Ethan asked, voice small. Marcus locked eyes with him, steady as a mountain. Never. This is your home. No one has the right to take that away. For the first time, you could see peace settle on the man's shoulders, not because of the fortune he'd built, but because his whole world, his son, was safe at last. And as the taillights of that woman's car disappeared down the road for good, you could almost feel the universe breathe out. But here's the thing. Was justice really served? Or did Marcus just use his power to right one wrong with another? Was there more he could have done? Did he see the warning signs too late? Or was this exactly what needed to happen? I'll leave that up to you. Tell me, if you were standing there that day, would you have done the same? Drop your thoughts below. Is family about blood, money, or the choices we make when nobody's watching? Let's hear your take on what justice means and who really deserves a second chance. And hey, if stories like this hit home for you, don't forget to share, subscribe, and keep the conversation going. Because sometimes, the most powerful moments in life are the ones we don't see coming. You'd think, after a day like that, things would settle down, father and son reunited, the villain driven away, and the world set right again. But life's never that simple, is it? Sometimes, when you try to close the door on trouble, it slips in through the window when you least expect it. That night, with the fire dying low and Ethan finally asleep, Marcus stared into the embers, his mind racing. Outside, a late summer storm was brewing, thunder rumbling somewhere out past the hills. Maybe it was just the weather, maybe it was the heaviness in his chest, but Marcus felt like the story wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next morning, the sun barely up, Ethan wandered into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. Hair sticking up in every direction. Morning, Dad, he mumbled, voice thick with sleep. Marcus smiled, poured him a glass of orange juice, tried to make things feel normal. But normal had left this house a long time ago. You could tell by the silence, by the way every footstep seemed a little too loud, by the echo of the woman's words still hanging in the halls. They ate breakfast in that strange quiet, both of them tiptoeing around the pane like it might wake up and bite them again. Let me back up a sec, that woman, the one Marcus sent packing, she wasn't some random stranger. Her name was Linda, and she'd worked for Marcus's company for years, always ambitious, always angling for a better spot at the table. When Marcus's wife died, Linda offered to help, convinced everyone she'd be a motherly figure for Ethan. Now, nobody's perfect, but you wouldn't expect someone to turn on a child like that, especially not for a little power. Word travels fast in a small town, and by the time breakfast was over, folks at the diner were already buzzing. Some blamed Linda, some blamed Marcus for trusting her in the first place. And then there were those who whispered that money can't buy you family, it can't buy you loyalty either. But that's not even the twist. Just after noon, there was a knock at the door. James, the old chauffeur, opened it, and there stood a woman nobody recognized, late 50s maybe, gray hair pinned back tight, eyes sharp as tacks, dressed in a nurse's uniform that looked out of place against the country dust. She introduced herself as Mrs. Carter, a social worker from the county. She'd received a concerned report about Ethan's welfare, something about instability at home, emotional neglect, even talk of physical roughness. You could see Marcus's jaw clench so hard it might break. Ethan, sensing the tension, hovered near his father, watching the woman's every move. Mrs. Carter smiled kindly, crouched to meet Ethan's eyes. "Hey there. I'm just here to make sure you're okay. Can you tell me what happened yesterday?" For a second, I thought Ethan might clam up, but he just looked at Marcus, then at the social worker, and started talking. He told her about the woman, about being pushed outside, about how scared he'd felt, and how his dad had come home and sent the woman away. Mrs. Carter listened carefully, nodding, making notes. Then she asked Marcus to step outside so they could talk alone. The conversation was all questions and paperwork. What arrangements had been made for Ethan's care, why Marcus had been gone so long, if there was any history of trouble at home. You could see the hurt and anger simmering under Marcus's calm answers. This was his home, his boy. Who the hell was she to come judging after one bad day? But rules are rules, and even millionaires have to play by them sometimes. That afternoon dragged on forever. Mrs. Carter spoke with James, with the housekeeper, even called Ethan's grandmother on the phone. There was no hiding from the fact that, yes, Marcus had left his son with someone who wasn't family, and yes, Ethan had been hurt by it. Maybe not the kind of hurt that leaves bruises you can see, but the kind that sticks around deep in the heart, long after the suitcases are put away. The thing is, Mrs. Carter wasn't a villain. She saw a scared kid and a dad who'd made some mistakes but was trying to make it right. In her line of work, you see enough of both. Here's where the story really takes a turn. Just as Mrs. Carter was about to leave, the phone rang. It was Linda. She was calling from a motel downtown, voice trembling, begging to speak with Marcus, not to get her job back, but to apologize, to explain. Against his better judgment, Marcus took the call, listening as Linda poured out her story, how she'd lost her own child years ago, how jealousy and grief twisted inside her every time she looked at Ethan, how sorry she was for lashing out. For a moment, Marcus wanted to hang up. But instead, he just listened, the way people hope to be heard when they've got nothing left but regret. After the call, Marcus stood there, phone in hand, staring at his own reflection in the window. Maybe Linda was telling the truth. Maybe she was just trying to save herself. Either way, the past couldn't be undone. He turned back to Mrs. Carter, who was watching him with that unreadable look social workers get. "I made mistakes," he admitted quietly. "But Ethan's my world. I swear to you, nothing like that will ever happen again." Mrs. Carter nodded, left with a promise to check back soon and a warning that trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. That evening, as the storm finally broke and rain hammered the roof, Marcus and Ethan built a blanket fort in the living room, letting laughter drown out the thunder. "Are we going to be okay, Dad?" Ethan asked, curled up safe for once. Marcus pulled him close, whispering, "Yeah, kiddo. We're going to be okay. And this time, nobody's going to tell you different." But nothing in life is ever tied up that neatly, right? Outside, the rain washed yesterday's tracks away, but inside, the memory stuck. The staff whispered in the hall, the neighbors talked, and somewhere in town, Linda wrestled with her ghosts. Ethan still woke up some nights, afraid he'd be sent away again, and Marcus watched his son with a new kind of worry, the fear of loving someone so much, you can't stand the thought of losing them. Some would say Marcus should have seen it coming. Others would say he did everything a father could. But the truth? That's up to you. So, you tell me, is forgiveness just a word we throw around when things get messy? Or is it something we owe to people who hurt us, even if they're family? Was Marcus right to give Linda a chance to explain? Or should he have shut the door for good? What would you do if you were in his shoes? Drop your take in the comments, because stories like these don't end when the camera cuts, and sometimes, the biggest battles are the ones we fight in our own hearts. If this hit home for you, don't forget to share, subscribe, and keep the conversation going. The world could use a little more kindness, don't you think?